Y'all wanna get turned? I heard that you trying to go climb to the top. I start from the bottom, it's kinda like putting on socks. You ready? Yeah. Y'all ready or not? Don't let me get hot, though. Clean like a mop, whole world is shot. This place gon' knock, this place gon' rock. Y'all ready or not? Ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? Pay my dues, punch that clock. You ready or not? You ready or ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? Pay my dues, punch that clock. Ready or not? You ready or hey.
All right, welcome back. Another episode of Pain to Profits, and I'm here with my friend Tim Jordan, who is a serial entrepreneur. Bought 3 companies by the time he was 24, and we're going to share a little bit more about his story on what it takes to actually run and grow a business, all the pain and turmoil that he's gone through, what he's learned, and impart some of that wisdom on you guys. Tim, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so you are unique in the sense that you bought 3 companies by the time you were 24. Were you always an entrepreneur? And what kind of jobs did you have? And at what point did you realize that, like, hey, I just can't work for anybody else. I got to go do my own thing.
Yeah, there was a couple points in my life. As far as the jobs I had before being an entrepreneur, I got a job selling cars on my 18th birthday. And I was working at Best Buy, and this guy tried to hire me on a car lot when I was like 17. He said, come and see me when you're 18. And I did it, and it was awesome. Started making 60, 70 grand a year while I was in high school. And it taught me, I was an introvert. It like fully pulled me out of my shell and then like showed me this whole different side to the world where I could influence my own wealth so much more than a traditional 9-to-5 job. Along the way, there was a couple people. There was this high school teacher that I never really had any interaction with until like his last day of class. He pulled me aside and said, hey, you don't have to work for anyone else if you don't want to. You have that type of capability. And that always like stuck in my head. So, and I had a cool guy in the car lot. He was one of those, he transitioned from wealthy to not wealthy, wealthy to, he was in this ugly cycle, unfortunately, but he put I think like a lot of us, a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad in my hand when I was like 18 years old, and it kind of changed my life. So
that's incredible. So, what class was that where the teacher said?
It was a high school business class. It was the only business class at my high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I enjoyed it, but I had no real interaction with this teacher. And literally the last day of class, he sought me out and told me that. And it kind of changed my perspective. It was a really awesome thing.
So you were making 60, 70K at that point. So he probably knew like, okay, this kid's just cut from a little bit different cloth.
I imagine, yeah.
Do you think it's a good idea for people who want to get into entrepreneurship to have some sort of stint in sales?
I completely think that is probably the best simulation you can have. Right. Commission sales it's so similar to entrepreneurship, the ups and the downs and the uncertainty, but then the limitless upside potential of it also.
Well, yeah, when you first start the business, you're generally the first salesperson, right? So you're getting out there trying to figure out the processes and the systems.
Right.
And if you're uncomfortable doing that, man, it is a long, hard road.
For sure.
There are similarities, for sure. But there's the whole other nuance of like employees, back-end finance. And you said you already had that guy who you worked on the car lot with, right? Yeah. And he was up again, down again,
Mm-hmm.
Probably knew better.
Yeah, right.
So at what point did you know that hey, I'm done working for other people and I want to go buy a business? What was that?
Yeah, so we actually owned a business at that point.
Okay.
I was working on the car lot, I was kind of done with it. I've been at it 4 years. It was great money, but yeah, I was done with it.
It's a grind.
It's a real grind. So I tried to sell a car to a guy who I didn't end up being successful at, but he offered me a job. And I thought it was a Ponzi scheme. Turns out I typed the organization that he worked for, his name, into Google, and it was a Fortune 500 that I'd never heard of. And it took about 9 months, but he ended up hiring me off the car lot into a bachelor required position 18 months before I got my bachelor's degree. Gave me a truck, flexible schedule, let me finish out my degree. So, but in that 9-month period, we had been Danielle and I had been talking about buying a business. Well, shoot, if our window tinting company didn't come around, get the deal done, and close it in between the time of us talking about it and me getting that job. So it kind of happened side by side. for me, which was interesting, which was great. My wife operated the business for a few years while I was working corporate. And then I saw the guy that hired me in the corporate world get reorged out. I mean, he just got washed out in a reorg, and he was awesome. Like, we were crushing it. And to see him get washed out in a reorg, he was way better than I was at what we were doing.
Yeah.
It killed me on the bureaucracy of working for a large company, working for anyone else. Then a big catalyst for me was my wife moved for me once. She moved from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Fort Collins, Colorado. And she said, I'm not doing it again. I love you, and we can make it right here. And working for other people, oftentimes there is that relocation. I was in a situation where I had to be relocated if I wanted to ascend. And it was an easy out for me. I'd already seen this stuff that I didn't like in the bureaucracy of a Fortune 500. And then she just said, hey, we have this other business. Let's grow over here, and let's just make our life together and enjoy the freedoms that come with working, that we've seen our parents, enjoy working for themselves. So that was a moment for me, for sure.
So how young were you guys when you got married?
I was 20. Danielle had just turned 21.
Because, every time you talk about her, you're like, dude, she's a badass.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to numbers, back end, managing the business stuff,
she's amazing.
She's amazing at it. And that can be rare. It's very special when you guys have that.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, over the years, it's actually been challenging for Casey and I, and we haven't actually worked together too much.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're older, more mature, so it's very easy for us to work together.
Right.
Is there any special secret sauce that you guys have in your relationship? To two-part question: make sure it doesn't muddy the waters of your personal life, and keep those things separate, but also work together peacefully and well.
Yeah, there are probably two principles that because we've worked together for 15 years now.
That's impressive.
And it's better now than it's ever been. But there's two principles that really help us keep it separate, both mainly in that our marriage is our marriage, and that's most important here.
Yes.
But we have to work together outside of work. So when we're at home, we don't talk about business unless it's on a scheduled meeting. It's super crucial for us. We don't one-off comment about goods or bads unless we're just kind of talking like husband wife, but
right.
We're not making business decisions. We're not analyzing things unless there's a scheduled meeting. Now, at the office, that's a different story. We have a working relationship at the office the same way that any other or that coworkers do.
Right.
But that's really crucial for us to not allow that business to bleed into the home time.
Dude, how do you manage that? I have a hard time because I feel like I'm just always on.
Yeah. There's a couple of different ways. Now it's a muscle for me when I walk in the house.
Yeah.
I'm either in the office. If I'm in the office, I'm working. If I'm out of the office, I'm not working. But that I just have to be intentionally thinking about it and working on it. Sometimes you have to pray about it a little bit, that because you can't always control that situation. So, and then we agreed together. I think that was really crucial. This was very early on. We were kind of like, marital fights were arising because of issues at work or something along those lines. And we just came together and said, we can't do this. When we're at home, we have to be at home 100%.
I love that. I mean, just for our audience to unpack that, I think that's super important advice and wisdom to keep it separate. Yeah. And if you don't prioritize it, it ain't going to happen.
Right.
You're married to her first, right?
Right.
So don't forget to date. Don't forget to prioritize those things. Do you guys do date nights regularly?
Of course. Yep. Have to. I think that's super crucial. And like you said, we are married first.
Right.
Business is business. That's important, but it's nowhere pales in comparison to a healthy relationship with your wife.
Yeah, and I know a ton of entrepreneurs who get super successful and then they get divorced or whatever it may be. And for me, man, that was always one of my biggest fears about going all in is if I leave the person who supported me from the beginning in the dust, none of it's worth it.
I know. I feel I don't talk much about it because it's kind of negative. But I've seen quite a few people, quite a few mentors, maybe they're still married, maybe they're not, but they sure as heck don't have positive relationships with their children. They don't have as positive relationships with their wife as they could because they spent from 20 to 55 building whatever they have now, which they have something amazing, but it wasn't worth it to me.
Empty castle.
Yeah.
That sucks.
It probably limits, I'll be honest with you, I think it's limited our upside wealth potential probably, at least early in our lives. But the relationship I have with my daughter, the super positive relationship I have with my wife after working together for 15 years, it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, I will give up. That's not, I guess wealth potential. Let's redefine what wealth is, right?
Sure.
You gave
that's
up
a
the
good
money
point.
potential, right?
Yep.
But one day you're going to be laying on your deathbed looking back at your life, and you're not going to say, man, I'm really glad I put in that extra 70 that week.
Right.
I didn't go on vacation or hang with my kid or watch her grow up or go to her. She's starting to play sports, right?
Yep.
Go to her swim meet or whatever it may be,
For sure.
right? So, yeah, it's just not worth it.
Completely agree.
So the tinting business was the first business.
Yep.
Did you buy that business?
We bought it. So it was a commercial residential window tinting business based out of Golden, Colorado. Okay. We were 21. We just had the money that we earned. And granted, it was good money for our age, but
Right.
there was no wealth injection whatsoever. So it was cheap, which was one benefit of it. We saw great potential.
Yeah.
There was a few gaps in the industry that fit super well for us. So we bought that on the back of an awesome banker who's still my banker today. He was very young at the time. He walked in his office from day one. He said, "Yep, if you guys want to do an SBA loan, we'll find a way to make it happen for you." So we bought that on the back of his relationship and SBA 504 loans. We've done 7 SBA loans, 6 or 7 SBA loans over the years, and it's a hell of a process, as a lot of people.
It's a hell of a process, but man, it's an incredible loan.
For sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that, just so people can understand how the SBA 504 works?
Yeah, it's an invaluable program. It's there for primarily business acquisition. You can do real estate acquisition, but it's low capital investment. It's when we're bootstrapping our own business, be it 50,000 up to, I think they cap at 5 million. Usually 10% down. Sometimes working capital coming back. I think 3 of ours ended up at 0% down at the end of the day. The reason that there's a bad reputation is typically because of the application process. And don't get me wrong. When you turn in that application, it's 3 inches thick at the end of the day. Right. But there isn't anything in there that doesn't help you as an entrepreneur create a plan. It's not like they're having you write essays about world history. They're having you lay out your plan for your business and how it's going to be successful and how you're going to deal with the struggles. So I've always found the process, frankly, helpful, tedious at times, but helpful at the end of the day.
Well, and it's a fully amortized loan, right? You get 25-year full amortization, so that lowers the payment significantly, makes the cash flow work on the business a little bit better, and you can roll real estate into it, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, fees up front are high, which is the other bad reputation it has. Rate is crazy low, always has been, at least relative to current market rates.
Yeah, shoot, 2 years ago you could get like 2.5. 2.9, something like that.
I have a real estate 504 loan at 289 or something. Right.
Yeah. So and basically like the bank funds like 40% of it, and the SBA funds like 60%, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yep. You can also do acquisition with 7A, which is SBA 7A loan, which is 90% Fed backed. I'm sorry, 80% Fed backed, 10% exposure to the bank, and then you're 10% down. That's another great acquisition tool. They're really similar. The bank just decides which one they want to do.
Different amortization schedule on the SBA 7A?
7A, it floats. So the SBA underwriter decides what the amortization is based on the value of the loan.
Yeah, that's invaluable. I think, as we're heading into this next phase, largest wealth transfer in history is about to happen. Right? By 2030, all baby boomers will be over the age of 65.
Yep.
And I think the stat I saw the other day was 57% of them don't have a transition plan or an exit plan. So there's a lot of businesses that are just waiting to be snatched up by entrepreneurs who can see the value add opportunity to come in and add tech, process systems, skills. A lot of these businesses have been running for 15, 20, 30 years, and it's it's always worked, right? That's just the way we've always done it, Tim. So we just
Right.
keep doing it that way. So what was the opportunity that you saw, the value add? You mentioned that when you first bought your tinting company.
Yeah, it was mainly around that industry is owner operated almost exclusively, with typically very little business acumen. Danielle and I had a significant amount of business acumen even at that time, that we felt like we could focus on the business side of it and hire good people to execute the operations side of it. And we would be unique in Colorado. Even to this day, there's only a couple of window tinting companies that operate at a more business savvy or business focused level. So that was an opportunity. Profit margins were good, all those kinds of things. What you just mentioned about baby boomer exit issues or not having good exit strategies really relates directly to our next investment, which was in retail floral. In fact, in 2006, there were 25,000 independent retail florists, almost all owned by baby boomers, almost all without exit strategies. I think it's 10,000 today. We've lost 15,000 retail florists.
Is it because they just went out of business, closed up shop?
Yeah, most of them. That is the primary reason that we ended up kind of diving into retail florals. We started seeing this happen. I mean, that was around even when we bought our first flower shop, and it's happening right now. In fact, I just bought a flower shop on July 1st of 2022, and that exact thing was happening.
And how many floral shops do you have?
We
now?
have 4 flower shops. Yeah, we divested one of them in 2019 because the location, the geography didn't fit our overall model.
Yep.
But we're currently back up to 4.
Yeah. So whenever we talk business, I always ask you, like, why that business?
Yeah.
And you always say good profit margins. What's a good profit margin to you?
Yeah. On the retail side of things, we're seeing, especially in retail floral, we're seeing a 65% gross profit margin, which erodes quickly with the increase of labor and
Sure.
commercial real estate costs.
Sure.
But we felt like we could manage everything below that gross profit, cost of goods line better than other people. And it
And
gave
the
us
sole proprietor operator. Yeah, a lot of these people are the florists, and they're also doing the bookkeeping
Yep.
and all that stuff. So
I would say of the 10,000 remaining, probably 9,500 of them are that way. And I'm not there's 1 or 2 other non-owner operated flower shops in the state of Colorado.
So, and you bought a few different brands of floral shops, and obviously the one you just bought's probably under a different brand as well. Are you rebranding them? Do you keep the brand? What's the game plan there, and why?
Yeah, so we bought 2 flower shops independently in 2000, I want to say 12 and 13, approximately 12 and 13. They were 2 separate brands. We left them separate, and our plan was to operate them separately. They were in 2 different markets. In 2014, Spiro Palmer Flowers in Fort Collins approached us about a merger and a leveraged buyout that did happen in 2015, which caused us to relook at the branding strategy. And we have everything rebranded as Palmer Flowers, except for one, Paulwood Florist in Old Town Fort Collins. It's the oldest retailer in Old Town Fort Collins. It was founded in 1932. It has a cult following.
Special.
Yeah, it is it's a novelty brand.
Yeah, it's like tearing down an old historic building instead
Right.
of like redoing it. That's amazing. So walk me through leveraged merger, leveraged buyout.
Yeah.
What's that mean to the listener?
Yeah. It was a complicated transaction. So
That was your first one, right?
Yes, first and only that I've done. So what happened was I owned 2 flower shops. Spiro Palmer owned two flower shops. He wanted out. He had a few partners. There were employee partners, employee owners. And so we, to make it work, we had to merge the 2 companies, dilute his employee owners' ownership, dilute my ownership, which was 100% at the time. We had to agree on what that looked like, and then leverage buyout using debt to buy him out of the remaining operation. So we bought him out rolled the two companies into one, reallocated everyone's ownership.
And it was that a typical baby boomer, I want to exit out, or what was his reason for wanting to?
Spiro's not a typical baby boomer, but that was the ultimate reason for it. If you talk to him, he had a 5-year exit strategy in 2007, that lasted 10 years, basically.
Yeah, a lot of people's business strategies got extended. So how did he pick you guys then? Would you guys already have a relationship, or were you kicking his ass?
It's a funny story, and he didn't tell me it till years later. He had his right-hand man, Michelle Adams, who still operates the business with us today, call me and set up a meeting. And I'd heard his name, never met him. We had lunch in Loveland, and he was sizing me up for competition. He was going to open a flower shop next door to us.
Oh, wow. Directly next door?
Basically.
Wow.
But by the end of the meeting, I think he saw that we were young, energized business people in an industry completely void of that. And that we were... Then on top of that, over the next few months, he learned that our morals aligned, which is super, super crucial in succeeding somebody like him. And he decided that we were his retirement plan. And the reason I bring up the morals, I think it's unbelievably important when you're selecting partners. It's something I've learned one of the most key things I've learned over the past 5 years is if I'm partnering with somebody, their morals must align with my morals. And that is maybe the most important piece. I put myself in his shoes. His name is on the building. He's operating businesses. They have a property management company, a big real estate
holding community.
Yep. If my morals didn't align with his, I could quickly erode his brand with having nothing to do with him. And similarly, put yourself in my shoes. I'm taking over this. We were 27 years old. We were going from 20 employees to 100 employees overnight. It was a big leap of faith for us to, feel like there was a way to make this work.
Yeah.
And if I have somebody that I couldn't have this, positive relationship for the next 5+ years, there's no way I would have gone in on that.
Because he stayed on as the chair or president.
Yeah, he was president for 2 years. He's still technically on our board. He doesn't show up to the board meetings very often. He's usually in Greece at this point.
He's hanging with his grandkids and stuff like that. Yeah, he deserves it.
Yeah. So but he consults with me on a quarterly basis. So
that's amazing, man. What was that transition going from hyperspeed 20 to 100? What did that first year look like, and what were some of those pain points that you guys didn't expect, ran into?
Yeah. So the first pain point was definitely he had employee owners. So he had 4 employees that owned about 20% of the business at that time. They were the people that helped him build the business. They were still owners, and they didn't trust me. I was 27. Most of them had been in the industry longer than I'd been alive.
You can't even put a bouquet together.
For sure. So I was the owner of this and financially responsible for this organization, and I had to spend that whole first year proving to these people that I was capable. And that was really difficult, hard to understand. Then also we look at transitioning. They were tech savvy enough, about as tech savvy as a boomer business is, but nowhere near what we needed. And so coming in and updating systems day after day was much harder than I thought. To me, it was obvious that we needed to move from this system to that system.
Right.
Getting 100 people to buy into that when you're the new guy on the block is... Just because you're the owner doesn't mean that they're going to execute with that new system. So I didn't project that at all. It, again, had to really get people to trust me at the end of the day. Had to get better at implementing the new systems, not just, I set it up, I know it works, use it. It's a lot more difficult than I thought. And we've used those skills that we learned in that first couple of years even today.
Awesome. There's a book I read that changed my life just on how to tackle that. You ever read the book Speed of Trust?
No.
Stephen Covey book. So obviously it's like
Yep.
ACEs, right?
For sure.
But he says trust is built on the back of integrity, intent, capability, and results, right? So nobody really knows your results. They just know that, like, hey, this is what's worked. They don't
Right.
know your capable. So you got to win them over with integrity and intent,
For sure.
That just takes time. That's a relationship. There's no way around that. And he actually uses a story of a couple takeovers that they went through, and he experienced the same exact thing. So
That's awesome.
how did you build relationships with those people in order to win them over?
Yeah. I found myself, there's a lot of tactics, right? Meeting with them one-on-one, having regular check-ins, all those
But it's
talking
just slow, man.
points.
It's 100 people. you
Yep.
know?
But at the end of the day, explaining the why became, it's still today is my mantra. I even if you don't necessarily want to know, if I project that there could be some angst or some concern as to something I'm asking you to do, I give you the entire why transparently. And I think people then become trusting and at least understand that I'm thoughtful, whether they,
You
whether-
can't just wake up this morning and be like, this is what we're doing.
right. So I think that's super crucial. Take the time to explain the why to people.
What's been we can really focus on the floral business because it's probably the largest.
For sure.
Has the most employees, right?
Yep.
What's been your biggest failure as an entrepreneur, as a leader, growing the business, all those things?
Yeah. There's two that really come to mind. One, so we did this merger and leverage buyout. Our plan was to expand the employee ownership base, to have an employee owner in each of our stores and in each of our key departments, which that is still, our model and works very, very well. I was very hasty to make those decisions as to who should come on with me as a partner. And so I brought a couple people on, like immediately, right? Our store needs, this is our model. We have to execute it. I must execute it today. I need to deliver the results to these people who are
You
looking.
show them that I'm a man of my word.
Exactly. So we brought a couple people on that didn't work out. And for a variety of reasons, moral alignment, performance, those types of things. And that set me back so far, having people's trust that I knew what I was doing when I was bringing these new crucial people on. So it has caused me to really analyze our process as to how we partner with people. And I've already said a few of the things that I really value there, but it was a huge failure. And I could just see these people that I'm working to gain their trust and just getting
Why'd you
knocked.
bring that person?
I
into the
know.
fold, yeah?
What do you mean they're leaving? These other people have been here 30 years who we're working with, and you convinced us to bring this person in, and they're leaving in a year. That kind of a thing. So that was a big failure of ours. Another one that really comes to mind is price adjustments. We've been really slow to address our pricing models, and we worked on this concept of well, we can only charge so much because people will only pay so much for this product, and then struggle margin wise, right? Then everything else is going up, margin goes down.
At 65 starts to squeeze real tight.
Exactly. So I think your pricing model and just regularly addressing that it has to work for you first.
Right.
You have to be able to be successful within that pricing model. I waited years to make correct and appropriate adjustments to our pricing model. And I don't know how much opportunity we gave away over those years, and I won't do that again.
Was beyond just thinking that the customers wouldn't buy it, was there some other limiting beliefs that were keeping you from making that decision?
There is always a concern of our salespeople selling out of their own pocketbooks.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is, whether it's tint or flowers.
Right.
There's, and we can train on it. We do actively train on it, but there's still that tendency to
Belief, man.
Yeah.
Belief in the value of what you're offering is the hardest thing to overcome for a salesperson.
For sure. We spent a long time thinking about flowers as a cash transaction out of necessity. And we've spent a lot more time culturally focusing on the value that our product delivers in our community, and that it's not just, oh, it's a birthday, fine, I can't think of anything else, so I'll send flowers.
Right.
It's that we're meeting these people at the most crucial times in their life: anniversaries, deaths, weddings. Literally every single arrangement we send is meeting somebody out at likely one of the most important times of their life. And talking about that actively, setting a culture around that has been super crucial.
That's so good, dude. I want to dive in on culture because it's something that we don't always get to talk about.
Right.
When you have 100 employees, culture is a big thing, man.
Yeah.
People got to be bought into the mission and the vision. How do you keep that alive, and how do you train it, coach it, teach it? Do you use that as a guidebook to hire and fire people? What does that look like?
Yeah. So in fact, that's a good point. If you want to talk about failures, we just ignored it for probably the first, 4 years of post-merger. And we found ourselves in just an awful situation. Just nobody wanted to come to work. And I don't know if there's a worse feeling as an entrepreneur than having a business that your employees don't want to come to work at.
Yeah.
So Danielle and I and the rest of our leadership said, okay, this is going to be really painful, but we better start being very intentional in addressing this on a daily, hourly basis. We started with a blind survey. You want to have your guts pulled out.
Done those before.
So, but we garnered so much from it. And then we spent a year implementing all these things. So people said that they wanted to hear the plan for the business more directly from us. Great. Let's put these systems in place where we can regularly communicate, whatever the feedback was. If it was reasonable and we saw positive growth from it, we implemented it. So we got to this really leading into COVID, we got to this really positive place from a cultural perspective, but it also took probably half of my time and about a third of my wife's time. And that was not positive for the organization in any way, shape, or form. Not that it's not important. It is very important, but we have other responsibilities. Right. So we started looking at how do we create some systems and make this not a thing that we have to lead, the thing that is just a part of the people.
We are.
Yep. So we talk super actively about our culture, about how we want to be empathetic. We want to consider the business, but frankly, we're considering the people within our team more frequently than we're considering the business. And that's easy to say in the positive decision points, much more difficult to implement in the difficult decision points. But I've taken that on as that's my responsibility. When we're talking about somebody who maybe needs to be terminated, I stop the meeting and say, okay, you as a group, talk to me about what's right for this person. We've already talked about what's right for the business. Tell me about what's right for the person on the other side of this. And now I don't have to say that. I don't have to stop the meetings anymore. We just talk about that over and over again.
Sometimes you got a great person who's just sitting in the wrong seat.
Right.
It's like,
hasn't been heard, maybe they need support outside of what's normal for an organization. Well, I don't have to do what's normal for an organization. Why don't I treat them like a real person? So that all culminated at the beginning of this year. We brought on a cultural coordinator.
That's great. So somebody just wakes up and goes to sleep thinking about culture.
It's awesome. It has been, and she aligns. Had to be very, very clear with. We weren't looking for somebody to smack people over the head with a handbook like the normal HR person.
Or
does.
Just put fancy quotes on the wall.
Yeah, we want somebody to be empathetic to the people within our organization to help us unpack and create plans and help with those challenging situations. And it has been life-changing. It was an investment, don't get me wrong, but it has been life-changing for us.
I know those are those like intangible things that you can't like plug into a spreadsheet.
Right.
Like, we're going to spend this much and we're going to see this much return on that. You have to understand that if I can just get like 5-10% more production out of each individual, that's what that equates to the business. And it's ethereal, it's intangible.
What it's looked like for us is we have this young talent base that we've never had before. And they're all
Really?
just itching for promotions and wanting to be further invested into the business, which for a passion-based retail business, that's the sweet spot. So it's been really awesome for us.
That's amazing. So your employee-owned business, is that something that is like a carrot that people can go and grow into and get equity into the company? Are you guys an ESOP? Is that the term?
We are not an ESOP. We are an ESOP is a little bit more retirement focused.
Okay.
It has a lot of tax advantages for exits. We are a stock ownership LLC that's a little bit more operationally focused. Our partners vote on acquisitions, divestments, all those kinds of things.
Got it.
Hiring our HR cultural coordinator.
Right.
So we target people who align with our mission and vision, who grow into key roles in the organization, and if they want to make the commitments that's required, they get equity ownership and a seat at the table for making decisions. As I said, I've learned to be a little more cautious
Right.
or selective. Not that that's slower; it's just more selective. But
Well, you get clearer on what it is or the things that you're actually looking for.
Yep. So we end almost all, if not all, of our partner meetings with a discussion. Have you noticed anyone who would fit this team? Let's talk about them. Now we have a pretty defined process that we put people through to make sure that they fit well. And so it's now we have a group of 9 people that own and operate the organization. We're looking at 2 to 3 more for this year, which we haven't brought anyone on since COVID. It was just a little bit more difficult to do that.
So that's the inner circle.
Operates like a board.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And how do you leverage them? I just wrote a post about this the other day. It's really easy as the CEO to build a room full of yes men, right? An echo chamber, right? So how do you avoid that? How do you prevent that from being the case? Because generally you're a very smart cat with great vision, but sometimes you're biased, right?
For sure.
And so how do you avoid that, and how does that team interact?
So I think that question is crucial at all levels of organization.
Sure.
Is how can people disagree with you and have different opinions? So it's really easy to isolate into that situation. We just like I said, closed on a flower shop acquisition that we'd been evaluating through the first half of the year, and we had one member of our partnership team who disagreed. And what I tried to do is be extremely intentional with giving them a platform for disagreement, for acknowledging their the value in their points and their perspectives, for just really pushing them to speak up, even though it directly conflicted with what I was presenting. I wanted not just them, but everyone in that room to see,
To reconsider, right?
yes, this is why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
We could have just written the check and done it. I mean,
Not asked any of you.
right? The discussion is to have alternative points of view. So I think you have to intentionally give space for people to disagree with you.
Yep.
It takes a long time, and for them to have a lot of trust in you to disagree
Right.
with you. But then that's the opportunity. And it's like, great, this is awesome. Let's talk through it. If anyone else shares their opinion, please bring it up. Let's just foster that multiple opinions in the same room.
Yeah, it is our responsibility as leaders to just constantly open the door and just say, hey, give it to me. Are we living up?
Yep.
Are we doing this? Sometimes I'll get messages from employees, and I'm not sure, are they communicating that these are things that we do,
Right.
or are they communicating these are things that we should do? Right.
For sure.
Like it's a snapshot of some other business person that said this. So I'll just write back like, are we living up to this?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, great. And if not, then tell me. That's me opening the door and saying, hey, tell me if we're screwing up.
For sure. I think one thing that helped in this is Danielle and I disagreed on a big decision a couple of years ago. And she's on that team, and
Yep.
she's encouraged, obviously, to voice her opinion. I think it was good for everyone to see. In fact, I think we ended up on her side of it at the end of the day. But it was good for people to see, hey, this is not a head nodding situation. We need to talk about this. That's the reason we're here. Other ways to leverage them is try and find passions that our partners have and create teams or committees or those types of things. We made a very big change in one of our in our org chart basically this time last year, and created a committee off that team. Said, okay, there's a lot of varying opinions here. There's a lot to unpack. Let's create a committee of 4 people in this room. Here are your specific tasks. You need to meet 4 times in these next 6 weeks. We're not asking you to make a decision. We're asking you to remove that pressure, right? We're asking you to analyze the decision, to come back to us with recommendations on that. So doing those types of tasks or creating those types of opportunities for those people to have input. I mean, these aren't business people for the most part. They're floral designers and whatever. So whatever their role is. So we're pulling them out of their comfort zone and giving them opportunities to grow and develop.
That's so cool. It's so crucial, especially in an industry like that where, it's generally not seen as like a long-term career path.
Right.
You got to get those people bought into the big picture, because it sounds like you're going on a tear. Like, it doesn't sound like you just bought one. It sounds like you might be buying another one, and you can't do that by yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. We are so far beyond what Danielle and I could do.
Yeah.
And that's you have to, recognize that, right? As early as you can recognize that, as better off you are. But it's hard to create a organization and systems that don't rely on you entirely.
Is that our ego?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We have some workaholic managers in that organization who really the stores that they work in operate better without them there, because
they're just like meddler.
About them, but,
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. They're like always finding stuff to do. It's like, hey, Bill, we got this. Leave us alone.
The other piece to that is there's no way to find somebody that cares about the business as much as the owner cares about it. Right. It's one of the arguments for employee ownership model. It's one of the reasons we do it that way. But at the end of the day, there isn't anyone in your organization or my organization who's not an owner that cares about it the same way that you do.
100%. How has being an entrepreneur changed the way that you view time and money?
Yeah. What a great discussion. It's changed it 180 degrees for me. We grew up really not poor, but with not with a lot. And so for me, at the outset of all this, it was money driven. I need money to have a house. I don't need a mansion, but I need a nice house. I need a nice car. I need all those kinds of things that I didn't see as much growing up.
Right.
And that was it. And after 15 years or whatever it is as an entrepreneur, money's important. I need a house and I need a car, right, but it takes such a far back seat to creating and innovating within an organization that adds value to our community. It's not even close for me. That goes a lot back to what we talked about. I realized in that time when I finally opened my eyes that my employees hated coming to work. The providing a safe and positive environment for my employees to come to work to is way above money. There's become these things that have moved so far above the value chain outside of sustenance. Again, you have to have sustenance. Time-wise, I have one daughter. I have an 8-year-old daughter. She was born when we were 27, I think it was. I'd worked 60 plus hours a week every day for my 18th birthday until the day she was born. I took 6 months off entirely after the day she was born. And then I took 2 days a week off for the next 4.5 years after that, till she went to school. Changed my perspective on being an entrepreneur. Showed me that the business could operate without me there, every
I'm not so
moment.
great as I thought I was. Yeah.
Right. Which was super valuable. And then it just, God, it made me realize, and you look around your peers, especially peers older than you, of, you know what, we only have these 18 precious years with these kiddos in our house. And that may be a little bit more important time-wise. I have the rest of my life to work. And it has placed a true work-life balance into my life in my home, which changed my interaction with my family 100%.
Would you have done things a little different sooner if you could, looking back on it? Like taking more time to breathe from the business and think about the business instead of always being so consumed with working in it, or no?
I think every day I would like to work more on my business than in my business every single day. And I actively try to, but there are things that you have to do within a business. I don't know. Our life was so fast and furious from 18 years old to 27 years old that it created who Danielle and I are as people. I don't know that I would change that. The speed at which we moved and invested and went. It was fun, man. I loved it. I love buying businesses. I love
when I hear you talk about it, you get geeked out.
I love the analysis of is it the right business? I love the financial piece of it. I really love working with the bankers and the banks and the challenges that they put in front of you. So I don't know that I would have changed that time all that much.
Let's cap it off on this, because you have gotten several businesses now, and I think that's a very reasonable way for our audience to make that transition.
For sure.
I'm not sure that everybody is made to build something from the ground up.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for people who are considering, leaving their 9-to-5 or their job or their corporate job, executive position, and buying a business? What would you tell them that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Yeah. First of all, it's very doable and it's very rewarding. I think that you should go after it as hard as you possibly can. I think you need a strong team around you, and that team looks a little bit different based on your situation and in the type of industry that you're going into. And when I say team, I don't necessarily mean like partners in the sense of partner investors. Again, for us, it was banker. It was an insurance agent. You need those types of advisors around you. And for me, they gave me so much more confidence, right? Because that's scary. I don't care who you are, what you're doing, leaving some type of excellent job or any type of career, right? Yeah. To move into being completely reliant on yourself is scary, man. I had this mentor say something that stuck with me for 10 years or so. Oddly enough, he was my boss in the Fortune 500 company, but he said, you know what? There is a false sense of security in employment. People weight employment as being so much more safe than being an entrepreneur, and it's categorically false. It's just not true. You can be fired. You can be reorged down 5 chains. You can be required to move. There are so many risks that are different risks that come with entrepreneurship, but they're the same, if not worse, at the end of the day.
You don't have any control over.
Right.
You're at the whim.
So that helped me put that risk concept to bed a little bit. Not to bed entirely, but helped me consider that. So have a good team around you, and maybe don't overweight your own security in your current position. If there's something out there that speaks to you and that fits well for your situation, it may not be as risky as you think.
You can always go get a job.
Right. That's right. Being an entrepreneur doesn't make your skills less marketable in an employment environment. I think they make it significantly more marketable.
100%. Awesome. Well, how do people connect with you? How do they follow up and see what you're up to these days? What social platforms do you hang out on?
Yeah. Facebook, Instagram, Tim Jordan CO on Instagram. Yeah, we always have stuff pumping out content wise through Palmer Flowers. It usually has a lot of me involved in it. Press releases. If one thing I'll throw out there is the Colorado Employment Office did a PBS documentary on Palmer Flowers
Cool.
last year that talks about our employee ownership model and the conversion to it. And it's super well done. Not speaking a little self-servingly, but it's out there on YouTube. Just Palmer Flowers employee ownership. You could see our whole story on there, and it's really valuable.
Cool. So, can we get that from you, or should we go look it up? Or how
I can get that too.
okay, we'll put it in the show notes so everybody can link right to it.
For sure.
Last question: when are you going to start writing content on business? Because you got a savvy business brain that people need to hear about.
I don't know I don't know if I'm communications driven enough to do that, buddy.
Well, we'll just leverage this content.
There you go.
And then it'll be the first piece, man. I appreciate you a ton. Thanks for imparting your wisdom on us and the audience, and I can't wait to have you back for the next one.
Awesome, man. I appreciate being here. Always fun talking with you, Samson.
Thanks, brother.